Did you know that something as simple as changing the lighting in your bedroom can drastically improve your sleep? In this video, I'm going to talk about how you can make these simple lighting changes, not just with your bedroom, but also with your phone and other devices, and also whenever you go outside, so that you can sleep a lot better. The main reason that light is so important has to do with your circadian rhythm. Your circadian rhythm is basically this 24-hour clock that all mammals have. And it's controlled by something called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, or the SCN, which lies in the hypothalamus in your brain. Pretty much everyone agrees that this controls our sleep-wake cycle. But it really controls almost every single aspect of our body. It controls our metabolism, our heart rate, our blood pressure, our body temperature, etc. Now, this SCN in our brain will communicate with the cells in the rest of our body in response to light. So it'll adjust its activity and its signaling in response to not just light in general, but also the timing of the light and also the intensity of the light. So light has two main effects on our internal clock. The first is it will suppress melatonin. And the second is it can shift our circadian rhythm. So we'll talk about melatonin first. Melatonin is a sleep hormone, and melatonin will build up typically in the evening time in response to darkness. So when there is no light, we get more melatonin. And when melatonin is high, it's basically a signal for us to go to sleep. It doesn't actually put us to sleep, but it really helps us sleep. Now, this melatonin is one of the most important hormones that controls our sleep-wake cycle. Now, our circadian rhythm can also shift in response to light. So, for example, if you have light exposure at nighttime when you're supposed to go to sleep, not only will this suppress your melatonin, it will also delay your circadian rhythm. Or in other words, make it so that you want to go to sleep later. At the same time, if you have a lot of light exposure in the early morning and afternoon time, then this can also shift your circadian rhythm backwards and make it so that you want to sleep earlier. So in a nutshell, you want to have light exposure during the daytime, but no light exposure at nighttime. This is essentially what our ancestors used to do. Before there was any of this artificial light, our ancestors used to just use the sunlight. And once the sunlight went out, they would light a fire, and that would be their main source of light at nighttime. Unlike the city of New York, which is constantly lit up all the time, a small fire can't really get you very far. So our ancestors would typically sleep a lot earlier than we did because they just couldn't see anything. Now, like I said, the intensity of the light also matters. So typically when you go outside, that's going to be light at a much higher intensity versus if you're sitting in your office building and getting that lighting from your ceiling, that's going to be at a much lower intensity. But ideally, you're going to have a higher intensity of light during the daytime. So if you go outside for like even 15 minutes during the daytime and get a high intensity light exposure, then you're going to be more prone to having much better sleep later at night. And studies even show that when you get a lot of light exposure during the daytime, you don't get as much melatonin suppression at nighttime. So this study took participants and it had them exposed to a lot of light from 2:30 p.m. to 9 p.m. So about 6.5 hours. I know that's really long. But then these participants either went on a tablet and looked at a screen or read a physical book before they went to sleep. What they found is the group that looked at the tablet, even though it was an artificial light, they did not have suppressed melatonin and they were able to sleep okay. So I know this 6.5 hours in this study was a long time, but even if you can get like 15 minutes or something, so if you're stuck at work all day, when you're during lunch or something, if you can walk outside for like 15 minutes and get some light exposure, that can really pay off later on. Or at the very least, in the morning when you're getting ready, use really bright lights. This is really key for people that live in areas where they have really minimal light exposure. Now, this is important because other studies show that when people have this artificial light exposure at nighttime, but do not have any light exposure during the daytime, then they really suffer from these artificial lights. In general, when people are exposed to more of this artificial light at nighttime, then they have more awakenings at nighttime, and they do not get as much of their deep sleep, which is their restorative sleep, which so many people are lacking. This study again had people either reading from an iPad or a physical book before they went to sleep. But the difference here is the people that read from the iPad took longer to fall asleep. They had less sleepiness at nighttime. They didn't feel like sleeping, so they started going on their phone, they were scrolling for hours. They also had less melatonin because of the light that they were exposed to. They were also less alert the next day, and also for the next few days, even when their schedule went back to normal, their melatonin was still suppressed by about 90 minutes. So it's kind of like a delayed digital hangover that just never went away. Now, this study is real for a lot of people that have a normal job, because you wake up in the morning and most likely it's still dark outside, and you get to work and you're in that building all day long. And then by the time you get home, it's usually already dark again. Now, I'm speaking for someone that lives in Michigan and it's getting close to winter time, and I already know what the cycle is like. It's a little different in the summer. In those months, I can get a lot more light exposure. But also 90% of Americans will look at electronic devices before they go to bed. So that means that a majority of people out there are really affecting their sleep by simply looking at these devices before they go to sleep. Now, what can you do other than just stop looking at these devices? Well, I already talked about during the daytime, trying to get at least 15 minutes of light exposure, but also just dimming the lights in the evening time. If you just gently start dimming the lights throughout your house at least an hour or two before you go to sleep, it can kind of create a transition in your brain, or a signal that it's starting to get more and more closer to nighttime. Because instead, if we just keep these bright lights on all day and all night until we're about to go to sleep, then it's really hard to have a gradual transition. But if you slowly start to dim these lights, it can allow your brain to produce more melatonin. Now, that being said, also limiting as much blue light exposure as you can. So these phones and these other screens are really bright, but they also produce blue light, which is the worst thing that we can have right before we go to sleep. A normal artificial light at nighttime will suppress our melatonin, but a blue light will be about twice as worse. And the simplest thing you can do, other than just simply not looking at these devices, is to turn on a blue light filter. I know my iPhone has a setting where it not only dims the screen, but also eliminates a lot of the blue light on it. You can also keep more warmer color light bulbs in your bedroom. So instead of having really high intensity lights, instead having lower intensity lights that are more warm and not as stimulating to your brain and not as suppressing to your melatonin. Now, when it comes time to actually being asleep, you want it to be as dark as possible in the room. So the first suggestion I have is using blackout curtains. I recently got some blackout curtains in my room, and I tell you, it makes such a big difference when you're sleeping. You know how annoying it is when your neighbor or the building next to you has this light on all night long, and it's really going to prevent you from sleeping. If you can't get blackout curtains, at least getting something like an eye mask, which is just this cloth that goes over your eyes, which will essentially black out any light around you. These are really easy to get, and they're super cheap. I think I got mine on Amazon. And they're really good for traveling or something. So if you go to a different hotel room and these curtains don't really work so well and you're getting this light in, you can always put that eye mask on to make sure that you're exposed to darkness. And you want to keep your bedroom dark all night long. So if you have to go to the bathroom or something in the middle of the night, it's better to not turn the lights on. I used to turn the lights on every single time I went to the bathroom, and I didn't realize that going back into bed, it was really hard for me to go back to sleep. You can even put like a motion sensor night light in your bathroom so that whenever you walk into your bathroom, this really dim light turns on so you can still see and walk yourself to your toilet. And that way you're not going blind. But this way you don't have to turn on the whole light and really wake yourself up just to go to the bathroom. And the last tip I have is just look throughout your bedroom at nighttime and see if there's any devices that are producing a light. Sometimes your TV, even if it's off, still has a light at the bottom of it. There's usually a setting or something you can do on that TV to make sure that that light stays off all night long. And same thing if you have like a fan or something like that, and that fan produces this light that doesn't go away. Those are the most annoying things. Sometimes you can even get some like black tape or something, and whatever devices are producing light, if you can't take them out of your room, just put some tape over it. I know I probably sound really crazy, and you're probably gonna look really crazy if you start doing this, but trust me, it will really improve your sleep. But anyways, thank you guys for watching. I hope you liked that video, and I hope you learned something. And if you have any other tips to help with the lighting or help with your sleep, let me know in the comment section below. As always, if you haven't already, hit that thumbs up button and subscribe to my channel below, and I will see you in the next video. Okay, ma'am, your child has 3 cavities we need to take care of. But they're on baby teeth, right? Yes. Okay, that's fine. Just leave them alone. They're gonna fall out anyway. Sadly, I hear this way too often, so I think it's important to make a video on it. A lot of people think baby teeth aren't important because they're just gonna fall out. But this video might change your mind, because